Hello, students, and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into a very, very important chapter, not just for your exams, but for your life. We're talking about consumer rights.
So, let's start with a simple question. Haven't we all been there? You buy something, you get it home, and you feel cheated. Maybe the quantity was less or the product just stopped working. That feeling of frustration, that's exactly why this chapter is so crucial.
First things first, let's be absolutely clear on this key term. Who is a consumer? Well, it's any person who buys goods or avails services for their own personal use. From that packet of chips you buy to the mobile phone you're using in the marketplace, we are all consumers. Okay, let's get into it. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll cover the consumer's place in the market, your rights, how to get justice when things go wrong, what it means to be a conscious consumer, and, of course, a special section just for your exams with all the key takeaways. So, you might ask, why is this chapter even needed? Why do we need protection? Well, think about it. As an individual consumer, you're often in a pretty weak position when you're up against large companies or clever sellers. And sometimes, sellers can exploit this through really unfair trade practices. I'm sure you've heard of these. Things like putting a magnet under a weighing scale, mixing water and milk, selling you faulty goods, or charging even 1 rupee more than the maximum retail price. It happens all the time. But people didn't just sit back and take it. To fight this kind of exploitation, the consumer movement started to take shape. It really got organized back in the 1960s. By the 70s, organizations were creating awareness, and all this pressure led to a massive landmark moment in 1986, when the Indian government passed the Consumer Protection Act, which we all know as COPRA. And this is where things get really interesting. COPRA wasn't just a piece of paper. It gave us, the consumers, some very powerful rights. Think of them as your superpowers in the marketplace. Let's look at them through a few real-life case studies. Let's begin with the story of Raji Matthew. He was a healthy student in Class 9, just like many of you, who went in for a simple tonsil operation. Now, due to a doctor's negligence during that operation, Raji suffered severe brain damage and was crippled for the rest of his life. It's a heartbreaking story, but his father fought, and he fought hard for justice. After a long battle, the National Consumer Commission awarded compensation. This case is a powerful example of what's at stake. And Reggie's case brings us to our very first right, the right to safety. This means you have the right to be protected against any goods or services that are dangerous to your life or property. Think about things like pressure cookers or gas cylinders. They have to meet safety standards for a reason. Now, what's really interesting is how simple information can be a powerful tool for your safety. Just look at this comparison. Without information, you might just buy milk without a thought. But with information, you check the expiry date. Without it, you might take medicine incorrectly. With it, you read the directions. You go from a passive buyer to a smart, protected consumer. And this brings us to our second right, the right to be informed. You have the right to know everything about a product, its quality, its price, its expiry date. This right was made even stronger by the RTI, or the Right to Information Act of 2005. Let's move on to our next case, the story of Abhirami, a student just like you. She joined a 2-year coaching course and paid the fees up front. But after the first year, she felt the teaching quality just wasn't good enough, and she wanted to leave. You know what happened? The coaching institute refused to refund her money for the second year, but Abhirami knew her rights. She filed a case, and the court sided with her. It ordered the institute to refund her money, making it clear that she has the right to choose. This case perfectly demonstrates your right to choose. No seller can force you to buy a particular brand or stick with a service you don't want. A classic example is when you get a new gas connection, the company cannot force you to buy the stove from them. You have the freedom to choose. Okay, so you have all these amazing rights, the right to safety, to be informed, to choose. But what happens if they're violated? What if someone cheats you? Where do you go for justice? This is where your fourth important right comes in, the right to seek redressal. This is your right to fight back. It means that if you've suffered a loss or been exploited, you have the right to get compensation. It's about making things right. Now, to make sure getting justice wasn't some long, complicated process, COPRA set up a special 3-level court system just for consumers. You've got courts at the district, state, and national levels. Okay, now this is a very, very important point for your exam, so listen closely. Where you file your case depends on the amount of money involved. For claims up to 1 crore rupees, you go to the district commission. For claims between 1 crore and 10 crores, you go to the state commission. And for any claim above 10 crore rupees, it goes to the national commission. Please, remember these figures. You know, having rights is only half the story. To actually use these superpowers, you also have a role to play. You must be a conscious, aware consumer. That's what the government's famous Jago Grahak Jago campaign was all about. It literally means, wake up, consumer, wake up. It was a massive effort to empower every single one of us with knowledge. And one of the simplest ways to be a conscious consumer is to look for these quality marks. The ISI mark on electrical appliances, the AG mark on things like spices, and the hallmark on gold jewelry. These logos are your assurance that the product meets certain quality standards. All right, let's quickly revise the most crucial points for your exam answers. You absolutely must remember the main rights: safety, information, choice, and redressal. And of course, that 3-tier justice system with the claim amounts for each level. And finally, let's leave you with a thought, framed as a common exam question. If a consumer is not satisfied with the decision of the district commission, where can they appeal? The answer is they can appeal to the state commission. This shows the system has checks and balances. So now that you know your rights and how the system works, the real question is, how will you use this power in your daily life? And that's all for today's explainer. To make sure you score full marks on this chapter, you have to check out the description below for important questions, mind maps, and your complete exam kit. And if this helped you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you and keep learning.